Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Drums and Drams. I'm your host, Cameron, and today we're going to be looking at one of my very favorite entry-level scotches. This is the 10-year-old Glenmorangie Original. All right, so like I said, this is one of my favorite entry-level scotches. For those of you who are brand new to the world of whiskey, or for those of you who might even be bourbon drinkers, this is going to be a great way to sort of dip your toe in the water and get a feel for what Scotch is all about. Now, if you've ever tasted bourbon, you've tasted the influence of corn, of rye, of barley, and maybe even wheat. But when we're talking about this Glenmorangie, and really any single malt Scotch for that matter, we're talking about 100% malted barley. Now, what that means is it's just foundationally different than bourbon. The actual experience of drinking it is just a little bit different. The flavor profiles are different. And while you might think of bourbon in terms of its, quintessential butterscotches, vanillas, caramels, and cinnamon, those things are still going to be present in Scotch, but just in different ways and in different intensities. Now, when many people think of Scotch, they tend to think of the really smoky Scotches that are produced on the island of Islay. Those are heavily peated Scotches that produces flavors basically like a rubber tire and a Band-Aid had a baby, or you're, like eating the ashes of a campfire. They're unpleasant if you aren't accustomed to them or if you're not expecting them. And typically people lump all Scotches into that category, and that's just not the case. I actually started with those heavily peated Scotches before I started exploring the other regions of Speyside and the Highlands, and that brings us to this Glenmorangie. Glenmorangie is a Highland distillery, and they are one of the first distilleries to finish their whiskeys. What that means is they have an initial maturation period in a particular cask, and then they move that whiskey into a different cask, usually one that has held a different kind of wine or a different kind of spirit, to finish its aging in that other cask to impart some new flavors before they bottle it. So in this case, the Glenmorangie Original is sort of like the base Scotch that gets used after those 10 years or so, and that gets moved into different casks to be finished, and that constitutes the core lineup of Glenmorangie's Scotches. So what you see here on the drum is that core lineup. We have the original, and then we have three other options here that are finished versions of this. So the black label is the Quinta Ruban. This is finished in port pipes. Port is a very rich sort of fortified dessert wine. The Lasanta here is finished in sherry casks. Sherry is a very common finish for Scotches. And this is the Nector D'Or, which is finished in Sauterne wine barrels. And that's going to impart, some of those white grape and dessert-like qualities from that wine. Now, the actual Glenmorangie Original here, this is coming at us at 43% ABV, which is a pretty common ABV for something like this. It's got a 10-year age statement on the bottle, which is great. That lets us know that the youngest spirit in here is 10 years old. There could be older, but there cannot be anything younger. That provides a very helpful point of reference, and it's just a good, transparent thing for distilleries to do. And finally, the casking on this, because it's not finished like these other sort of extensions of the line are, the casking here is two different things. There is brand new white oak barrels being used here, and that's going to impart lots of good vanilla flavors. And then there are refill bourbon barrels being used, which are the same American white oak, but just having been used to age bourbon before. Those are going to impart more of those toffee characteristics. Okay, so enough about this whiskey and the Glenmorangie Distillery. Let's go ahead and get into it, nose and taste it, and see what we get. Yeah, so right away, the first thing I should say is that this is just an inviting nose. I mean, it's obviously a younger, 10-year-old whiskey here, but this is just lovely. A lot of vanilla right up front, and right behind that vanilla is sort of a combination of two things. There's a combination of citrus, I think a lot of pineapple in here, as well as a little bit of orange. But there's also this sort of crisp and like lingering sourness in there. What it really is, I feel like, is like a sour green apple or a pear. And so what I get on the nose, is this combination of creamy vanilla, this underlying citrus characteristic of pineapple and orange, and also this sourness, this crispness of an apple or a pear. It's not complicated by any means, and it's not really meant to be. I think it's very vanilla forward, which is going to be the influence of those brand new American white oak casks. But of course, there is a little bit of lingering malty toffee in the background, but it's very faint. Really, the distillery characteristic here of citrus, floral, sweet, those things really come to the forefront here. So again, uncomplicated 10-year-old whiskey. It's simple, but it's very effective, and it smells delicious. Cheers. Oh yeah. Right away you get this like sort of, oh, it's great. You get this vanilla right up front, just like on the nose. But what comes behind it is a lot more present than what I got on the nose. The sourness is really there. That crisp green apple and pear that I talked about, that's really present like right away. And actually, I didn't really get a lot of spice on the nose, but here in the palate, there's a lot of like pops of spice along the way. So it's immediately hitting you with the vanilla. It's quickly backed up and transitioning into those green fruits. That citrus is there. And all along the way, there are these like, it's not cinnamon necessarily. It's almost just like black pepper, just poking at your tongue. It's really great. It's a really good combination of things. And actually, all things considered, a 43% ABV here and a young entry-level scotch like this, the finish is a little bit longer than you would expect. I wouldn't call it any longer than like a medium finish, and even then, that's like the most arbitrary term ever. But it's longer than I would expect for something like this. Here we go, second sip. Yeah. Wow. There's a lot more on the back end now, on the mid to back palate on the second sip. Wow. I mean, a little bit astringent, a little bit green, like not vegetal. It's not like an Irish whiskey in that sense, but there's a little bit of like green astringency now that's kind of popping up on the mid to back palate, which again is to be expected from a younger whiskey like this. But yeah, it's still just absolutely delicious. Not a lot changed between those two sips, and it's just, I think it's really meant to be pretty simplistic, but I think it really outdoes itself. And this is why I prefer this Glenmorangie 10 over like a Glenfiddich 12 or a Glenlivet 12 or anything like that. When you're talking about sort of easy, approachable entry-level scotches, I always come back to this one. I just think it's more approachable. I think it's easier to understand. It's more pleasant, and I really love the humongous dose of vanilla that you get here. Last sip, and then we'll wrap this up. Yeah, just a great combination of sweet and sour through and through. Okay, so final thoughts on this whiskey. If you're the kind of person that is looking to drink something over ice, I don't know if this is quite the whiskey for you. I definitely sip this one neat because it is 43%. It seems pretty delicate and like you could drown it pretty easily. You could throw a few drops of water in it to open it up if you'd like. But overall, I would say take this one neat. The price point here is about $40, and that's not bad. I mean, for an entry-level scotch, anything lower than that, and you're going to start seeing the quality decline pretty sharply, I think. $40 is not a bad price for a 10-year-old age-stated scotch. Now, availability for this is available anywhere and everywhere you go. It is the core of the Glenmorangie line, so you're not going to have any problem finding this at just about any liquor store, probably in the world. And if you would like to check out the other offerings in the core lineup, oftentimes they'll sell sort of a box set that contains a full bottle of the original with 3 sample bottles of the other, or some combination of those things. It's fairly easy to be able to find a full set of this core lineup. Would I recommend this whiskey? Absolutely. And just like I said in the beginning of the video, if you are brand new to Scotch, or if you're a bourbon drinker looking to jump over, this is where I go for those kinds of people. My friends, if I'm leading tastings, I always come back to the Glenmorangie 10. It really just ticks all the boxes. It's not overly complicated. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be delicious, meant to be enjoyed and easily sipped, and to make you want to come back for more and more and more. So thank you so much for tuning in. This first episode of Drums and Drams. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you agree, disagree with my assessment here, please feel free to let me know. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Drums and Drams. I'm definitely more active on Instagram though. And finally, I'm going to be doing some live streams coming up. I haven't quite figured out what day of the week, if I'm going to solidify on one of those days and do them weekly, but keep an eye out on YouTube. Keep an eye out on Instagram for those announcements. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time on Drums and Drams. Cheers.